that cardiology is the most competitive fellowship, but what we don't know is what it takes to match. Especially when you're from a community hospital, you are an IMG, and you need a visa. What does it take to match? In this video, I'm going to be going through all the steps that I took from PGY1, PGY2, PGY3, and during interviews, and all the things that I think helped and the things that didn't. I'm going to be going through the mistakes that I made, and if I could turn back the hands of time, the things that I would do more and the things that I would do less. So let's get to it. So my journey started in PGY1. During PGY1, I had an idea that I was going to do cardiology, but what I did first was to focus on internal medicine. And for people who are in PGY1, what I want to say to you is do not worry about cardiology. Do not worry, absolutely not. Just focus on internal medicine. That is the primary reason within your residency, right? You want to be as good as possible. Learn efficiency, patient care, how it's done. In the first 4 to 6 months, you want to absolutely be known as a fantastic internist, not a fellow, not a cardiology applicant, no, okay? In fact, if in PGY1, if you start being known for just cardiology, it may hurt your reputation. So just focus on internal medicine, first 4 to 6 months. However, if you need a visa like myself, I was on a H1B visa, and you want to transition to a green card, you have to start early. Don't wait for the 6th month, start in the 4th month, finding ways to switch from a H1B to a green card. And the reason for this is because only about 70 programs offer the H1B, but in truth, only about 40 actually sponsor it. So it gets really hard if you're on H1B, so I would advise you to start trying to find ways to switch to a green card while in PGY1. So after the first half of PGY1, get a solid reputation. In the second half, now you're looking for mentors within your program and outside the program. But first, start within your program. Look for people to point in the right direction. One of the biggest investments you can make is to find good mentors within your program. And then at the second half of PGY1, I started thinking about how to start my research portfolio. I actually had some basic research knowledge back in my home country, but then I started full-blown towards the second half of PGY1. I reached out to a couple of friends of mine who had the skill and were able to teach me some rudiments of research. I also went through Coursera, some courses on Coursera that were absolutely free. I put a link in the comment section. You can download that for free. And that was how I started my research portfolio journey. And after talking with peer mentors and attending mentors, I got an idea that I needed to present at conferences. So I put together a list of conferences that I wanted to attend. So I just having at the back of my mind that there are conferences I need to attend to, and these are the things I need to submit to those conferences ahead of time. Give me ample time to prepare. And also for that timeline of conferences, I put a link down below. It has all the conferences from PG, from all the subspecialties of internal medicine. So you can just download that for free. So in summary, in PGY1, I tried to be a good intern. I started looking for ways to mitigate my visa issue. I started identifying mentors at the second half of my PGY1 and found both attending mentors and peer mentors, and I tried to learn, start my research portfolio, and I got an idea of what the conference timeline was. So that's what I did in PGY1. Now in PGY2, here, basically this is the year of visibility. I increased my research production. I found a group of 3 friends, or 2 friends plus myself, 3 of us, who were in a research group. We kind of teased each other. We tried to encourage each other and build our research portfolio. And we learned the basics of research, conceptualization, data analysis. I go very deep into how we went about building a research portfolio within residency in my future videos, so be sure to subscribe. So we came together, built a research portfolio for ourselves, and then we joined cohorts. And what I mean by cohort is there are a lot of professional bodies. ACC, which is the American College of Cardiology, they have this really fantastic umbrella of cohorts that they have. It includes everybody from every demographic. You could find a cohort within ACC and join. It's absolutely free, and there's so many benefits you get, from networking to mentorship to just access. That helps a lot. I also joined the ABC, which is the Association of Black Cardiologists. That was really helpful. And I think there are other associations like the Hispanics, so you could also join depending on the demographic. But ACC has every single thing in one, so you could just join the ACC. That was really helpful too. I started presenting. I started from my own program in my state, within the state, ACC, ACP, then national presentation at AHA, HFSA, ACC. I presented all. But also one of the most important things here in PGY2 is visibility and networking. Outside of research output, you also want to gain visibility and you want to network. By the time you want to start productivity, you want to start research, the question is, how much research do you need and what type of research do you need? This is the question I get every single time. But what I did personally was I went to the profile of people who had matched before me, and I specifically went to people who were from community hospitals who needed a visa, and I found them on either Google Scholar or ResearchGate, and I kind of went through the total number of publications that they had. Now the publication is a combination of both their research, both the abstracts and conference presentation. I tried to get an idea of what their scholarly activity portfolio was, so as to use that as a benchmark for myself. And after going through about 15 to 20 people, I came to the conclusion that I'll need about 20 total scholarly activity. And that doesn't have to be full research. It can be some full research, some abstracts, some PY projects that you did, also some journal clubs that you did. So what I understood was about 20 was the ballpark for people that had my own profile. So I set 20 as my benchmark. And they don't all have to be published. Some of them might be submitted, some of them might be still under review, some of them they can be at different level of completion. It just has to be started. So visibility, I got visibility by going to conferences and then posting on LinkedIn, on Twitter. Anytime I win an award, I put it on LinkedIn and Twitter. I actually had instances where I got people had walked up to me during conferences and were like, oh, I like the work you're doing, keep it up. I had a few program directors comment on that. So I think that kind of may have helped, so it's something that if you are interested, you could do. If you're not, that's fine. And lastly, networking. The problem I have with networking is that everybody talks about networking, but nobody speaks about how to network, which is a problem because there are different ways to network and which way is effective. I don't know. I go into this in a much deeper detail, so be sure to subscribe. Now, the first thing is you want to network with the people in your program, and that means forming relationships with them, genuine relationship that would outlast your pursuit for cardiology. Second thing is when you go for an outside rotation. I didn't have an in-house fellowship, right? So when I went outside my program to rotate, you want to be sure to do your best to demonstrate your knowledge, but also you want to create a channel that keeps conversation going. And how do you do this? For me, what I did was I'll come up with a research idea while on rotation. I'll bring that up to the preceptor. In my case, it was a program director, so that really helped. And then we will develop the research question. I will go to work. I'll get that formulated, get that started, and have them supervise that project. And I will take that project from start to finish within that time and have that communication open. You can now email them back and forth about problems or issues with the research. You are now communicating. That opens a genuine communication line, and that can last even up until the time you are interviewing. For me, I found that really helpful. At the end of the day, we were able to get that paper published. I presented that by AHA. So it's something that's the way, building a relationship and using something of common interest. Another way was you just email people, talk to them about what your current project is about, and if you could meet them at an upcoming conference to discuss more about it. That also worked. Another thing about networking is the networking that you do when you are already in the conference and you didn't plan. You just meet somebody randomly and then you talk about what your research is about and how you would like them to be part of it. But I had to network at various levels through social media, through emails, through in person and during conferences, and that really helped. It really helped down the road. So in summary, by the end of PGY2, you should have identified people like you who had matched into cardiology, what it took them to match was one, and then start your research portfolio, and then continue building relationship with your mentors, and also presenting your projects in your home institution, in your states and national conferences, and trying to gain visibility through social media if that's something you're into, and you're also trying to network outside your program. By the beginning of PGY3, fellowship application is already here, so there's not much you could do. What I did personally was write my CV, write my personal statement, had my letter writers know of 3 months beforehand that I was going to apply, and have follow up every 3 weeks to get my letter of recommendation. But you want to make sure your letters of recommendation are very strong, because that was the most important deciding factor in my match. Let me talk about it very briefly. I already talked about how to get a strong letter in my video for residency application, but I did the same thing for fellowship. And what I did was I would have like a Google document of the things that happened during my rotation with the cardiologist. For example, if a patient said, we love this doctor, he cares for us so much, he's fantastic. When patients compliment you in front of your attending, you should write that down somewhere. Just keep it like in a Google Doc. Any small thing that happens, we often kind of brush it to the side. What I did was I kept notes. Why I did that was when it's time for them to write your letter, you send them your personal statement, you send them your CV, and then you send them that small journal, that small summary of the things that happened. Why is that important? Because just having those small elements included in your letter will take your letter from an 8/10 to a 10/10. And actually, my letter recommendations were the most talked about during my entire interview. I think that approach is very strong, and I have used that approach all this time, and it's been something that I think has helped really well. So that's what I did to try and get a good letter. Another thing, I wrote my CV, went to my program director in internal medicine and had him go through it, and that really helped me. For my personal statement, I had 2 mentors go through it. Both of them were fellows. They went through it, made a lot of changes, and that also was helpful. I already researched programs that, were more visa friendly, and then I applied. So after applying, waited, I think the first 10 days, but there was complete silence. I didn't get a single interview. On day 14, I started sending out cold emails to program directors specifically, and I'll send to the program directors, I'll copy the coordinator. I'll just, briefly tell them about myself and the things that is drawing me to their program. I emailed about 20 programs, and I got about 7 or 8 of them replied me. I ended up getting 4 interviews from just cold emailing programs. And I put an exact email format that I used in the link below. You You could download that for free. Also, another thing that I did was for the connections that I had known before, I just reminded them about applying. So reached out to fellows that I had known before. I think I got 1 or 2 interviews, and the biggest thing was cold emailing and reaching out to program director and program chairs on LinkedIn and Twitter. That also helped. I got about 2 interviews from there. In total, I got 16 interviews. And what I learned through the interview season was that program directors were interested in ownership of your story and clarity in your journey. Those are the 2 things that stood out to me. And obviously, I'm going to go very much in depth about the interview season, so be sure to subscribe. But those are the 2 things that I think stood out: clarity and ownership. What are the things that I think helped, and the things that I would double down if I was to do it again? And what are the mistakes I think I made? So the mistake that I made definitely was, 1, I went to too many conferences. Oh my goodness, I went to so many conferences. I don't even remember how many conferences I went to. I shouldn't have done that. I should have scaled back, do like 3-4 conferences. That should be enough. And then secondly, I was involved in so many projects. I was spread so thin. I shouldn't have done that. I would advise you to focus mainly on your first authored projects. Do not give so much energy to other projects that are not your first 1, 2, 3 authorship. And lastly, one of the mistakes that I made was not applying for my green card earlier. I applied for it towards the end of my PGY1. I was still on the visa by the time I applied. I was still on the visa when I was interviewing. Close to my rank order list, I got notification that my visa had been approved. So I emailed program saying, oh, I no longer need a visa. But I'm not sure if that helped, because at that time most programs had concluded their ranking. That was one of the mistakes that I made. I should have applied for my green card way earlier. And then the things that helped me, the things that were by far, that if I could go back, I would double down on, was 1, my letters of recommendation. In all my interviews, from the 1st to the 16th interview, everybody talked about my letters of recommendation, and they talked so highly of it. Now, every single time it kept coming up, and it didn't just come up once, it came up multiple times within the same interview. So I would go to the first interviewer, second interviewer, the third interviewer, they will all comment about my letters of recommendation. So letters of recommendation by far. And then the other thing that I would say was also on par with letter of recommendation was research. That was also one thing that everybody talked about. Research during my interviews. Tell me about this research, tell me about that research. What drove you to do this research? What's the plan for the research? What are your thought process about your future in research? That was something else that was talked about every single time. So on a scale of 0 to 10, letters of recommendation was a 10, research was a 10. And then the next thing was personal statement. Statement was brought up a few times, and the specific thing they were referring to in the personal statement was my plans for the future, the things that I have stated in my statement that I was hoping to do in the future. That was brought up almost every single time. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I'll put the personal statement as a 7, 6 or 7. And then other few things that also came up, but not as often, was being a chief resident. That came up about 3 or 4 times. On a scale of 0 to 10, I'll scale it about 3 or 4. I don't think being a chief resident was necessarily high yield. Some people think that it may get you seen, but I don't think it necessarily will get you matched. That's the entire blueprint of things that I did to match into cardiology from a community hospital on a visa as an international medical graduate. And just following this blueprint, I believe, will be very helpful and useful to you. In the future videos, I talk about delving into networking and research. So be sure to subscribe. Put a link down below. It has the link for my personal statement. It also has the link to all the courses that I use to learn research. You can download that for free. Those of you applying for fellowship, wish you good luck. And as usual, see you in the next one. We all know